So here are some other reflections. If you've listened to people carefully later in life, many of them begin to talk about what really matters. Not the things that they once felt were urgent, or the arguments they once won, or the possessions that they had accumulated. Instead, people begin to talk about things they know for certain. Their faith, their family, their gratitude, their hope. Because when life is distilled down, most of us discover what really remains are a few simple truths that we carry with us. So in today's gospel story from John, a man who was born blind, you might have sensed this. He's caught in a storm of arguments about Jesus. The religious leaders question him. The neighbors debate what happened. The authorities demand explanations. And in the middle of all of the noise surrounding him, the man says something quite remarkable. One thing I do know. I was blind and now I see. The man makes one of the simplest statements of faith in the entire gospel. We can almost hear him distancing himself from all the debate, all the dispute, all the manipulation attempts. I don't know about all that stuff you're talking about, but one thing I do know, he says. The text shows us some important things about Jesus. Where people see opportunity for blame, Jesus shows opportunity for God's glory to be revealed. Where people see only what is impossible, Jesus shows a new reality. When human response is to reject people or abandon or dismiss them, Jesus shows us presence. And when people look to have our own assumptions affirmed, Jesus shows us more. And so the text raises an important question for us today. When it comes to matters of faith, what is one thing that we know? What is one thing that you know? It's worth considering because that one thing directs our steps and it becomes the legacy of our lives. In this man's story, we discover faith does not begin with having all the answers. The religious leaders, they want a theological debate. They want explanations. They want proof. But the man born blind doesn't have some complicated theology. He simply has an experience. He says, I can't explain everything about Jesus, but I know what has happened to me, how I can now see things I have never seen before. His life, it's different. It's better because of Jesus. That's often how faith develops, not in perfect certainty, but with some kind of an encounter. Many of you here today, I'm sure, could say something similar of your own experiences. I don't understand everything about faith, but I do know that Christ has changed my life. I don't have every answer, but I do know that grace found me when I needed it most. The man and his story show us faith doesn't require knowing everything, but rather it develops through knowing something true about Jesus. Think back over the past few weeks, the Bible stories that we've explored, for those of you who have been with us, the faith of people in those stories. Last week, we heard of the Samaritan woman who encountered Jesus at the well. One thing she knew about Jesus was that he knew her. All about her. He knew of her past, he knew of her place of origin, and he didn't walk away. She ran and shared her story with others, and they too came to know something true about Jesus. And then earlier this month, we heard about the man named Nicodemus who saw Jesus healing people, and one thing Nicodemus knew was that Jesus was from God. Think for just a moment. Has there ever been a time when, like the man born blind, standing in the midst of all of that argument and debate, has there ever been a time when the noise and the chaos surrounding you was overwhelming? with many voices saying who's who and what's what, to the point where you really don't know what's real or what's true anymore. Wouldn't it be great in those moments to be anchored in one thing we do know? One thing that is true: Jesus and his love. The love he has for you, the love he has for the world, the life he came to give. The truth we know, it shapes the life we live. And when the man says, I once was blind, but now I see, he's not just stating a fact. He's telling his story. And stories have power. The truth we carry, it becomes the truth we live and the legacy we create. If someone believes that life is only about success and competition, that belief shapes everything they do. If someone believes that the world is defined by fear, that belief shapes how they see everyone else in the world. But when someone truly believes that Christ brings light into darkness, that belief also shapes how we live. We begin to notice hope where others see only despair. We begin to offer grace where some would see the need to judge. We begin to trust that God is at work, even in the most difficult seasons of life. We hear that echoed in Psalm 23, the Psalm of David. David knew a lot about a lot. But the most important thing he knew was one thing he knew of God. And while it's true that we go through times of scarcity and times of provision, times on the mountaintop, times in the valley, times of feeling God's distance and times of knowing God's presence, one thing David knew and expresses in that psalm is that God goes with us through it all. The man born blind, who once begged by the roadside, now stands before powerful leaders. We see that man's courage, his strength kind of unfold throughout that reading. And if you didn't catch that, I invite you to go back and look at it again. He becomes confident and strong and able to speak his truth. Because when you know something about Jesus, it changes how you stand in the world. The truth we carry becomes the truth we live and the legacy we create. Juliette Gordon Lowe. Does anybody know that name? Hey, the scouts are raising their hand. Yes, yes. She knew a certain truth that shaped the way she lived. In 1912, she gathered 18 girls in Savannah, Georgia, and started what would become the Girl Scouts of the United States of America. And at the time, she probably didn't imagine the legacy that moment would create. Today, tens of millions of girls have learned courage and leadership and service because Lowe saw something others could not see. In a time when society held certain expectations about what girls could do and should do, Lowe knew something else. She believed that girls could lead and serve their communities and care for the earth and grow into women of courage and character. And yes, hear this, young ladies, you can do all those things and more. Because Lowe believed that generation after generation, many girls discovered their own gifts. The truth we carry becomes the truth we live and the legacy we create. Is there one thing you do know when it comes to a life of faith? I wonder about what we don't know in this story. What happens to the man who was once blind but now can see? I wonder what happens to the man who now knows the most important thing one can ever know, who now knows Jesus. What kind of life will he get to live? What legacy would he leave? We don't know the rest of that man's story, but here we are thousands of years later, and we are still talking about him. Still, people have been repeating his words. One thing I do know, though I was blind, now I see. His testimony has become part of the story of faith. Jesus said that he came so that those who do not see may see. Faith, it's not about having perfect vision, but about allowing Christ to open our eyes just a little bit more each and every day. So maybe the question we ask ourselves today is this: if someone asked you about your faith, what would you say? What is one thing you know about Jesus? Maybe it's this: that grace is real, that forgiveness, it changes lives, that hope can appear in the darkest places, or that Christ never abandons us. If you can name even one thing like that, then friends, rejoice. Be glad. You have something powerful to share. And sometimes that simple testimony becomes the legacy that we leave. This, my friends, is the good news of Jesus Christ. Thanks be to God. Amen.